make energy. And our energy is growing.
That's right.
And so I want to thank you all for all that you do. Before I talk about how ideas change over time and why adults tend to resist ideas changing, I want to ask somebody from the audience, anybody, if anarchy were achieved tomorrow, what would it mean to you in your personal experience in your daily life? Just a couple sentences about that. Anybody?
I'd build a house. Bare hands, build it.
You would just build a house.
Yeah. You just demolish my own. I live in Washington, D.C. with, regulations of, the wazoo. Demolish it and build my own log cabin.
That's an awesome answer. I've got some experience with that as a real estate investor. And you're right that dealing with permits, it's just this long, huge process.
I have 2 acres of marijuana.
Nice.
We're all coming from different angles and meeting at the same place.
I would tear the red tags off my house in Houston that I have right now.
Is it a stop work tag?
Yeah, stop work tags. I have them right now in my house in Houston.
I feel for you. That's what it is, and you just realize that when you're going through this process, bringing in your drawings, and the bigger the town you live in, the bigger of a process it is, and it's really just to maintain that bureaucracy. But like I said, we're all coming from different angles and meeting at this common core, this common ideal. It's awesome. Before I talk about how ideas change, I want to talk about what anarchy means to me. So to me, it's part of a much bigger picture. It's not just about what would be taken away when the government disappears, but it's about what's left. It's about all not the negativity going away, it's about a positive that becomes center of focus afterwards. So I've been collecting these ideas and trying to make sense, kind of trying to define a meaning of life, or at least a meaning for my life. And I've come up with these ideas that I call the theory of Anam. That's what I refer to them as in some of my YouTube videos when I'm touching on different topics, because it's bigger than just the politics. So your life experience happens in your mind. It seems like it's out there, but in actuality, your senses are just bringing in signals. And your mind, which is your brain and your heart, make up the meaning of those signals. And as your mind has these 2 reference points. One is the future, which are filled with hopes and dreams. And one is the past, which hopefully is filled with beautiful memories. And then there's this present moment, which is very hard to sense, and it's very hard to understand exactly what it is, because it's like a razor's edge. It's like an intangible thing. People are always meditating, trying to figure out what is this moment. But it's important because this moment is where the hopes and dreams, that's your experience of the future. This moment is where they're traded in for hopefully a beautiful memory, which is your mind's experience of the past. So every second, an exchange is happening. So it should be the directive of every human, to try to get the very best exchange possible. People who are trying to take every aspect of their life to the next level, whether it's your physical self, or your mental, your intellectual self, or your spiritual awareness, or even your relationships with your family and your friends, your travels, your diet. People that are trying to take every aspect of their life to the next level understand what I'm talking about. Squeezing every delicious experience out of this razor's edge of this moment. Since anarchy allows the unfettered pursuit of a single person's potential and of a group's potential, or a population's potential, and because it isn't mired in the immoralities of status force funding, I believe that a voluntary society is the only spiritual form of social arrangement. That's why I'm here. But let me tell you why you are here. And stop me if you've heard this one before. You are here because you know something.
Yeah. Neo.
You don't know what it is,
Yeah.
but you've known it your entire life.
Come on.
You feel it. That something is wrong with the world. You don't know what it is, but it's like a splinter in your mind, driving you mad. Do you know what I'm talking about?
Yes.
In the movie The Matrix, Morpheus was explaining a simulated world that was designed to be a prison for the mind. And our current prison is the inherited and indoctrinated paradigms that our contemporaries cannot, most of them cannot or dare not break free of. Our whole social order relies on a set of protected paradigms. What sets of ideas does our society hold on to that hold it back from progress and from peace? We in this room know this stuff all too well because it is usually the roadblock to intellectually consistent conversations. We're always confronted by inherited ideas such as these. The government makes our money. A big military makes us safer. Children are taught by government schools. Roads are so complex of an issue that only aliens or government can figure them out. And of course, we know that these ideas are all false, except the roads thing. The belief in the necessity of government and concentrated power is so concrete in the minds of the average that the contrary is beyond consideration. The irrational belief in government is so strong, like a consistently rewarded addiction. It's akin to the codependency of an abusive relationship where the abused makes excuses for the abuser. We in this room are not practitioners of that religion. We know that nothing has been more destructive to humanity than democide, which is the killing of populations by government.
That's right.
In the last 100 years, it's estimated that 262 million people were killed by government.
Holy cow.
Let's think about that just for a second. Not to be a downer, but think about the person that you love the most. Think about losing that person in some stupid and tragic way. It's immense. Now think about that vibration of sorrow times 262 million in the last 100 years. Nothing has been more destructive to learning than the public school system. Nothing has held back advancement like the patent office. Nothing has been more destructive to economies or to money in particular than government control of it. There really is no telling how much further we would be as a species if those who wanted to live in peace and trade in peace could have had their own domain for the last 100 years, for example. So what are we trying to do? We, like Morpheus, are trying to wake up the minds of our contemporaries so that the freedom that we see as a possibility can become more commonplace in the real world. So why do so many prefer to take the blue pill and go back to sleep? Why does truth have to go through the stages of ridicule and violent opposition before it becomes accepted as obviously true? There are reasons that group ideas change slowly over time. One simple reason is normalcy bias. I'm not going to explain normalcy bias because of time constraints, because of a sign to my right. Another one is indoctrination. Government indoctrination camps, public schools. Ideas change slowly when the spectrum of conceivable possibilities is kept narrow on purpose. If Ford Motor Company taught the schools, the kids would learn the math necessary to buy cars. And even the advanced math class would only learn enough math to maybe buy dealership franchises, which still is still promoting the agenda of Ford. But the math required to invent a new mode of transportation would never be mentioned. In fact, it would be laughed at.
That's right.
Proponents of a carless transportation system would be accused of proselytizing an agenda to the students, and they would be kept away from the classes in order to protect the brains that are being washed inside. All the classes would have a pro-car buying bias, but I think the dumbing down of the Western classroom is even more diabolical than that. Just like the illusion world created in the Matrix, the worldview crafted by the public school, the structure, the curriculum, the Prussian school model has been adopted so that the controllers can own the children that they raise.
That's right.
They trade us with our social security numbers for more Federal Reserve loans the day we're born. They conform us. I was thinking of acquiesce, but they conform us to their ideals away from our parents
Yeah.
from the ages 8 to 18.
Yeah.
Then it's time to join the military or get straight to repaying those loans that the government borrowed in your name. This idea of the mind becoming a member and the body becoming an appliance of the state brings me to the next point, why obsolete ideas change slowly, and that's identity. Nothing is as hard to change as a belief or a habit that's tied to one's identity. Tony Robbins talks about people having difficulties with the cigarette habit. And it's not only because of the addictive chemicals in cigarettes, but it's because the action of smoking has become tied to the person's self-image. They see themselves as smokers. And as a result, his strategy to help people with that is to work on their identity as much as their willpower. It is when a smoker wakes up and says, like from the bottoms of disgust, and says, FTS. I think most of you know what that stands for. I am no longer going to be a smoker. It is then that they have great success breaking free of the old idea. Another example is, who in this room has been really in love? Think about it for a second. We all want to say we've been really in love, but I mean really in love. Like you felt the other person as part of yourself. Like the glorious sun rose and set in relation to them. Like even when you were in two different places, there was this line that connected you like some kind of cosmic energy. Well, it is the ways that you got tied to that person that made breaking up with them seem like death. And in fact, it was. Part of you died. Your identity. The way you see yourself died. And you've never been the same person since. What's that?
We have a little bit of time. Dana's on the way. Would you like to do some Q&A? Some questions?
Well, I'll just try to wrap this up. So identity is a big thing. Adults resist ideas changing. People in our societies now have been raised by the state and therefore see themselves, they're bought in so many ways. And I'm going to skip forward to where I talk about children because this is the point here. When you're talking to adults about freedom, you have to break through 13 plus years of this indoctrination shell, these ideas that have been put on them. Very hard for them to break free of. And no matter how persuasive our arguments are, to adults, only a small percentage, those with the intellect and openness at the same time, are going to be able to receive that message. Huge social changes often take more than one generation. An ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure. Since it is so difficult to defeat all the years of indoctrination of an adult, it is important to protect our children from it happening to them in the first place.
Absolutely.
What are some of the things that can be done to promote children growing up without statism? One is you can donate time or money to homeschooling or unschooling support outlets. You can raise your own children to be self-reliant and accept the consequences of their decisions, which will keep them away from becoming dependent. You can explain that anarchism is the default social arrangement. When the sick thinking of the state has faded away, it's what we'll be left with. When we stop initiating force on each other or allowing it to take place, when people quit voting on how to steal from each other, when we quit lending our authority to psychopaths, we will be standing in anarchy. When God sent our souls to live in these animal bodies, which only do two things really, sense and sustain, it was so that we could have a full experience and live as long as possible. And it wasn't so that a few secret families could impose an experience of their design on us, as if they own us. When a child grows up free from the start, they can know freedom on a much deeper level than adults. Adults were stuck in the intellect. We have to be thinking about it at the time to believe it or to feel it deeply. But when a child grows up free from the very start, they will be able to know freedom on a level much deeper, sub-emotional, or what some people call spiritual. I believe that it's when these children grow up and become adults, the idea of rulers will just fade away.
Yes.
And it's occurred to me recently that we don't need to board the ships of the state and fight everyone on board. We simply have to take the wind out of their sails. It is because of these ideas that I wrote a simple little story for the children in my life called 3 Friends Free. And it's a message of love. And I'm going to read the foreword, and hopefully you guys can read the rest. So many books about freedom are written for adults. Unfortunately, this means they have to disprove years of indoctrination to even gain the consideration of the reader. I think it is important to realize that human minds are receiving input from the very beginning and building the worldview that will become their reality. By talking to children about freedom early on, we can compete with the status quo influences that are ever present. It's easy to teach your kids about anarchy. You're already doing it. Don't hit people. Don't take things that don't belong to you are some of the first instructions that we give children. Later, combined with ideas of personal responsibility, the possibility of a voluntary society starts to come into view. In this story, 3 friends are tricked into trying out statism, and they soon find out it's not all it's cracked up to be. The story has many historical and modern references that make it fun for adults to read to children. There's lots of little hidden things that I think you'll enjoy finding. Like, what do the characters' names mean? What are the funny references at the gates? Not all these clues will be obvious at first to your young audience, but this book is designed to plant seeds that will bloom later on. Thank you all for caring about the minds of our little ones and about the beauty of freedom.